there seems to be a new version of TDS, which I would call tariff derangement syndrome. And many on your side seem disappointed that there is no inflation today. As a matter of fact, we saw the best inflation numbers since 2020. So there has been nothing passed on. There has been no tariff recession. So no inflation, no recession due to tariffs.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So once again, we got to talk about Democrats humiliating themselves after another failed attack on President Trump backfires. Okay, at this point, Democrats don't know what to do except to attack President Trump because they don't stand for a damn thing. And if you look at what they quote unquote accomplished during Biden's administration, they don't really have that much to brag about. Okay, and they accidentally exposed what they accomplished during the Biden administration that they had to quickly delete because some intern that tweeted this out quickly figured out that, wait, this doesn't really attack Trump or make the Democrats look good, right? This does not display the message that we actually want, because Democrats have put out this post right here trying to attack Trump on inflation, right? On grocery prices, okay? They claim in Trump's America, U.S. grocery prices reach record highs in 2025, right? Now, again, this headline is very misleading because people need to understand that we're not experiencing deflation, okay? And if we experience deflation, then likely we will be going into a very bad depression, right? The goal for inflation is to minimize it, okay? To try to keep it from rising the way that it did under the Biden administration, which is what this post from the Democrats actually shows, right? Because if you look here and you see when Biden was in office, inflation is rising a lot, right? Inflation is rising significantly, okay? But if you look at inflation under Trump, you can see that there's a different story, a much different story, okay? And when you look at inflation in Trump's second term, we're not seeing the same pattern that we saw in the Democrats, right? This is inflation under Trump's second term, okay? This is the inflation that Democrats are currently complaining about, right? Oh, we saw 0.3% inflation on the last report. Oh, God, right? In the grand scheme of things, this is what it actually looks like, right? Again, not what we're seeing right here, okay? Not what we're seeing right here at all under Biden, okay? And this is why Democrats decided to delete the post, right? So they put this out here trying to attack Trump, but yet they didn't realize, they were too stupid to realize this graphic does not show what they wanted it to show, right? It doesn't show what they think they show. It actually shows that inflation was primarily caused by the Democrats, okay? And honestly, the inflation that we're currently still experiencing today are probably residuals of all the spending that Democrats did while they were in office, right? I mean, let's be honest. So, again, this is more embarrassment for Democrats because at this point, when your party doesn't stand for a damn thing and you can't really stand on your accomplishments, all you can do is attack Trump. But in this case, the attack against Trump backfired because, again, Democrats, their record on inflation is terrible, right? It's bad. It's the worst record in 40 years, okay? So I'm just saying, Democrats have no room to talk, right? And they basically prove to their audience that they're the reason why we have inflation, right? So when Democrats complain about inflation, what they're actually complaining about is a problem that started under their administration, right? It started under Biden, okay? As this graph that they posted showed, and they had to delete because they figured out that, wait, this isn't the type of propaganda that we thought it was, right? So with that being said, there are still concerns about inflation, okay? But the type of inflation we got to talk about here today is the inflation of the cost of the Federal Reserve building their new building, right? Their new palace, okay, that costs $2+ billion, maybe even $3 billion, which is what President Trump is citing here. And we're going to get into that little dispute, this very awkward dispute between President Trump and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, okay, who President Trump is trying to get the lower interest rates, okay? And I want to go ahead and play this clip of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent discussing the issues that the Trump administration has with the Federal Reserve when it comes to the renovation project for their new building that, again, is costing taxpayers a whole lot of money, while the Federal Reserve can't seem to keep their own house in order when it comes to their finances.
The Fed is the house. It's a casino. The casino doesn't lose money. The players are the ones that lose money. And I'm not going to comment. I'm like you. I don't really understand what's going on with the size, the scope, the cost of the building renovations. One can ask, was it a good idea to start the renovations for an enterprise that's losing $100 billion a year? So $100 billion because of a mismatch in the bond portfolio from the short-term rates. And I think that the Fed should undertake an internal review, because I think all the other operations are endangering its independence of monetary policy. As I've said, monetary policy should be kept independent. It's a jewel box, should be walled off. But by undertaking all these other activities, then you come in for criticism, just like you're seeing here, that might impinge on monetary independence.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that, okay? And that leads me to this very awkward exchange between President Trump and Jerome Powell, as President Trump has been basically destroying this man in public for not lowering interest rates.
It looks like it's about 3.1 billion, went up a little bit, or a lot. So the 2.7 is now 3.1.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah, I haven't heard that from anybody at the Fed.
It just came out.
Our notes had it about 3.1 as well.
3.1.
3.2.
This came from us.
Yes. I don't know who does that.
Are you including the Martin renovation? You just
That's our
added.
entire capital.
Yeah, you just added in a third building. Is what that is. That's a third building.
Well, I
including
know,
the
but
Martin building.
it's a building that's being built.
No, it was built 5 years ago. We finished Martin 5 years ago.
It's part of the overall work.
But it's not new.
So we're going to take a look. We're going to see what's happening, and it's got a long way. Do you expect any more additional cost overruns?
Don't expect them. We're ready for them, but we have a little bit of a reserve that we may use. But no, we don't expect to be finished in 2027. We're well along, as you can see.
Nice to take these off every once in a while when we're not under too much danger. So, any questions?
Mr. President, does the issue give you any? As a real estate developer, what would you do with a project manager who would be over budget?
Generally speaking, what would I do? I'd fire him.
Do you think this issue, Mr. President, gives you cause to do that?
Well, I'm here just really with the chairman. He's showing us around, showing us the work. And so I don't want to get that. I don't want to be personal. I just would like to see it get finished. And in many ways, it's too bad it started. But it did start. And it's been under construction for a long time. It's going to be a real long time, because it looks like it's got a long way to go.
Yes, sir.
So,
Mr. President, are there things the chairman can say to you today that would make you back off some of the earlier criticism?
well, I'd love him to lower interest rates. But other than that, what can I tell you? The country's doing really well. I just briefed the chairman on the deal we made with Japan. Japan is putting up $550 billion in order to lower their tariffs a little bit. That way they have a little bit lower tariff. And they also opened their country to free trade, which nobody thought was even a possibility. And we get a zero tariff in the free trade. We don't pay tariffs, and they're going to pay 15% on everything they send into our country. So it's great. But they put up, as you could call it, seed money. Let's call it seed money. You could call it anything you want, but it's a total of $550 billion. So nobody thought any of that was possible, and it's wonderful. And we're doing pretty well with the European Union, likewise. And we have some others. They're all really big, and our country's going to make a lot of money. We would be helped if interest rates would come down, but we're going to see how the board rules on that soon. I'd love to see them come down a lot. But we have a country that's thriving. We had a dead country 1 year ago. Today we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. And we'll get this one finished.
Mr. President, you
Thank
said
you.
that Jerome Powell's announced.
You've been watching video of President Trump touring the construction project at the Federal Reserve with Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Of course, President Trump has been incredibly critical of Fed Chair Powell for not lowering interest rates. And as of late, he and allies pointing to this construction project, which is over budget.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Now, again, imagine an institution that can print money, right? The Federal Reserve can print money, and they're still over budget, right? They still don't know how to manage the budget of this construction project, which is a renovation project. It's really no surprise the financial situation this country's in, because clearly our institutions can't manage money, right? So the country as a whole is suffering because of it. So with that being said, I want to play a clip because the Office of Budget Management actually answered questions from CNN about the discrepancy between what President Trump said and what Jerome Powell said in regards to how much this actually costs and how much of this budget is being overrun. And essentially, it appears as if Trump is referring to the project as a whole, right? Everything that encompasses the project from the beginning. And Jerome Powell is referring to what has yet to be built or what is currently being built. And I think that is the discrepancy. Take a look.
Specifically, can you talk about the project, $3.1 billion versus $2.5, and Trump and Powell both went back and forth on that.
The headquarters is 3 buildings. The 2 that are still in progress are the Eccles and the one that's next door to it with the tunnel, right? That is a $3 billion and counting project that started at 1.8. It is massively overrun. It's massively overrun if you take just the 2 buildings. Nearly $1 billion of cost overrun. So, again, we've got a lot of questions. Those questions were not satisfied, but we certainly have a better sense of what's going on.
Given the concerns are on the cost here, and that is exactly what y'all have been talking about, what the president's been talking about, who is responsible for giving the president accurate information about what the cost is? Because Fed Chair Jay Powell was correcting him on live television.
No, he wasn't. What the president pulled out of his pocket.
They had 2 different numbers.
No, the president pulled out of his pocket a page from the FOIA request of the Fed's own internal documents that is available on their website.
So when he's saying there's a 3rd building, you're saying he's wrong?
No. What the president is saying is the entire construction project that's going on, which is a build and renovation project over the last number of years, is currently at $3.1 billion. And what the Fed chair was saying was, no, you have to take one of the buildings out of it. Well, no, it's all one project on the whole complex.
Why do you disagree with that? If the building was already done and it's not part of what your issues are right now?
I don't know what you're saying. If you go back and look, and the president's looked at the forms, they're right there. You can see every single year. They put out the FOIAs for every single year. And every single year, the numbers have gone up for this project.
What number? So you're saying that the number Jay Powell gave was wrong and the one the president had is accurate in your assessment?
I think
right?
What the Fed chair is doing is splitting hairs in that moment to try to drive down the top line cost for what we're talking about.
Sir, and yes, we believe our numbers are accurate.
So
they're their numbers. Again, the president was citing their numbers from their forms that they have published.
That was a document you FOIA, just to be clear. Because
we did not FOIA it. It's available right now on the Fed's website.
Yeah, so discrepancies like this are part of the reason why you have some people demanding transparency from the Fed. Specifically in regards to why is it that they refuse to lower interest rates, and what are they talking about behind closed doors in order to justify keeping rates elevated. This is why they're currently being sued for more transparency, and I want to talk about it. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Welcome back. Now, there's Azoria Capital filing a lawsuit today against Federal Reserve Chairman Jay Powell, alleging that the central bank is violating transparency law. The suit in part says this: Azoria believes the Federal Reserve is violating federal transparency law, and we are asking a federal judge to immediately block next week's Federal Reserve meeting from happening behind closed doors. Azoria is demanding the court order that the Fed to keep the meeting open as the company sounds the alarm on recent policy decisions, saying Azoria is deeply concerned that the FOMC under Chairman Powell is maintaining high interest rates to undermine President Donald J. Trump and his economic agenda. Joining me now is the CEO himself, Azoria CEO James Fishback. James, thanks very much for being here. So you think this is all political?
I do, Maria. Good morning. The truth of the matter is that inflation is now at a 4-year low under President Trump's leadership. 5 consecutive better than expected, lower than expected inflation readings. And the Federal Reserve refuses to lower rates from a 20-year high. That is a life-altering decision that affects Americans all over the country. They can't get a mortgage. They can't get a home. They can't start or grow their family. Azoria is now suing Jerome Powell in federal court this morning to demand that next week's meeting be open to public observation as federal transparency law requires.
Well, I mean, they always have meetings behind closed doors. So this meeting next week is no different than any other meetings, though.
Well, the fact of the matter is, the fact that they've always broken the law does not excuse them from breaking the law. There's a couple Supreme Court precedents that have moved in our favor, specifically the overturning of the Chevron doctrine. But I got to tell you the truth, Maria. Americans are frustrated. They do not understand why Jerome Powell is being too late. They don't understand that despite inflation being at a 4-year low, that the Federal Reserve is refusing to lower rates. And so the public, Azoria, the President of the United States, can't even know why the Federal Reserve is not acting in accordance with the data. And so the only thing that can be done here is for a federal judge to step in, to issue a temporary restraining order against Jerome Powell, and to block him from having next week's meeting happen behind closed doors. That's what we're demanding the court do.
You know, it's just so many implications here. It's not just, and this is a big one that you just mentioned, that a mortgage is out of reach for so many people, but it's also the impact on the cost of capital for the government. I mean, you know, President Trump has been talking about this $36+ trillion in debt that the U.S. faces. He's been talking about his goal to balance the budget at some point. And how do you do that when we're actually spending more money just on the interest to carry that debt than we do on defense spending? So do you think that Chairman Powell should be looking at that and working that into his mandate? I mean, I know that the mandate of the Fed is just unemployment and inflation, but isn't the cost of debt part of the growth of the economy? Because if it's costing us so much money to carry this debt, it is impacting growth.
That is exactly right. And that's what needs to be factored into the economic model, Maria, that Jerome Powell seems to be neglecting, is that when high interest rates actually stifle economic growth, hurt home buying, hurt the ability for the government to deliver the balanced budget that we all know that President Trump can. The president has spoken about this. For every point that interest rates are above natural, it's costing taxpayers $315 billion a year. That is $3 trillion over the next decade. That is $31,000 for every single American tax-paying household over the next decade, because Jerome Powell is not doing the right thing and looking at the data and lowering rates accordingly. Azoria runs an anti-DEI ETF. It's called SPXM. And what we see in the marketplace is that investors from all over the world cannot allocate capital properly if they don't know what the Federal Reserve is going to do next. The American public, businesses, and investors deserve to know what the Federal Reserve's deliberations are at any given point in time. That's why we're suing Jerome Powell in federal court this morning. I'm confident, Maria, the court will side with our arguments, but I got to tell you the truth. We are prepared to immediately appeal any decision, and if necessary, ask the Supreme Court to intervene before next Tuesday's meeting. Jerome Powell has to come out of the shadows. He cannot meet in secret. President Trump was right when he said in 2017 that the government needs to be open, honest, and accountable to the American people. And Azoria is standing up to President Trump's aim on that point.
Yeah. So you say that, you heard that. Okay. Now, here's the thing. I would like more transparency as well, too. Right? Because I'm still trying to figure out how in the world are they over budget for a project like renovating the Federal Reserve building, right? How is it that the government is always over budget and behind schedule? How is that possible, right? Why is the government so inefficient? Also, on top of that, again, when it comes to interest rate stuff, I think it's really going to come down to these next few inflation reports. I really do believe that at some point they're going to start to lower interest rates, but they can't do it too rapidly, right? They can't come out here and do a 100 basis point cut or something like that, because that could actually backfire. That could cause long-term rates at the end of the yield curve to actually go up, right? That's what could happen if rates are lowered too much, too fast. I personally feel like if they're going to lower rates, they should probably do micro cuts, right? Very slow, gradual cuts. See what happens, because we're still in that range of 2 to 3% inflation. Now, who knows? Maybe this could be the new bottom, right? I don't know. Again, we spent trillions of dollars in the Biden administration, and maybe this could just be the new normal, right? I don't know. But what I do know is that if the Democrats had these numbers, then this dude would be lowering rates, right? He'd be doing 50 basis point cuts, which, hey, it could contribute to inflation going back up. I don't know. So it's one of those things where part of me kind of feels like, okay, like maybe the Fed, maybe they're doing President Trump a favor by not lowering interest rates right now and kind of waiting to see what happens with inflation, because the last thing that the president is going to want is for the Feds to lower interest rates too early or too aggressively and for inflation to start to rise again. But then again, right? Then again, President Trump is a maximalist, right? He takes the maximalist position, even though that's not his real goal. So President Trump could be calling for aggressive cuts in order to get Jerome Powell to start doing micro cuts, right? In order to just get them kind of moving in that direction. And that could be the play here. I don't know. But what I do know is that, ultimately today it's a balancing act. And a lot of people, I think, are frustrated with mortgage rates. They're frustrated with the cost of capital, the cost of borrowing, with credit card interest rates. I mean, they're frustrated with the interest on their debt. Okay, and the Fed's lowering rates may provide some relief. Okay, but at the same time, if inflation goes up, then that's not going to last long, right? And ultimately today, interest rates are set by the market, and that's what people got to understand. So it definitely can influence those rates going down. Okay, that's generally what happens, but it's not always guaranteed, because the key is going to be what happens with inflation. And that's why I think these next two reports are going to be very, very, very important. They're going to be super important. If we get some good reports, okay, over the next 2 or 3 months, there is no excuse, right, for them to at least not start to lower rates gradually, okay? So it's going to depend. But the problem is that if we get a couple of reports that are like so-so, right, maybe one bad report or whatever, then I think that they're going to just hold their ground, right? And we're just going to have to deal with this. So we're going to see what happens. I know that President Trump wants rates to come down because it's going to help stimulate the economy. It's going to help more building, more production, the supply side stimulus that was just passed by Congress. But it's one of those things where we're gonna have to see what happens. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.